So this event is has been organized by SuccessWorks here within the College of Letters and Science. And we're very, as I said, very excited to have you joining us today. And we are so glad that you are here. So I'll start with the introductions. My name is Sarah Hallis, and I am the Experiential Education Coordinator here at SuccessWorks. And what that means is that I help to organize experiences for students, to explore their career interests, to learn more about potential fields of interest to them, and really help with their personal and professional development. So it's great to see you all today. You've been getting lots of emails from me, so.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Maureen Muldoon. I am a career and internship specialist, and I see some familiar names in the participant list. So it's awesome you are here. I advise students in the College of Letters and Science one-on-one for health, environment, and research related careers. So this is an area that I cover. Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Maureen. We want to take a moment to have a land acknowledgement here today. The University of Wisconsin-Madison occupies ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Dejop since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state government repeatedly but unsuccessfully sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. We want to give a special thank you to all of our presenters who are here with us today. We have 3 fantastic presenters who are here from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, or DNR for short. We also have a presenter with us who works at the Natural Resource Defense Council. And we also have a presenter with us from Evolution Marketing, and you can see their logos here. I really loved putting this slide together because there's so much color and innovation and creativity in these respective logos, and also reminds us of the importance of the natural environment and our habitat. So thank you so much to all our presenters. Maureen just put in the chat, or will be shortly putting in the chat, a link to the bios for all of our presenters. And we hope that students, you took some time to look at that in advance. And if you haven't yet had a chance to, certainly take some time to look at that after the event today. So thank you very much for that. Now I'm going to turn it over to Maureen.
So in addition to SuccessWorks, we also want to recognize today the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies and WASB, the Wisconsin Alumni Student Board. Both of these organizations are helping make this possible, and this was definitely a collaborative effort today. Next slide. So many of you may already be familiar with Zoom, but we want to make sure that you are aware of all the functions to use. So looking at the slide here, it's great to see so many faces with cameras on. It is definitely optional, but if you're comfortable, you can keep that on. When we get to the Q&A portion, you can do a thumbs up in the reactions menu in the right-hand corner of the screen. And we'll call that a hands up wave to ask questions. You can also enter questions in the chat box, and we will try and answer those there and also out loud. All right. And then for our panelists today, if you have any slides you want to share in the chat box, you will see a place where you can upload files and share links to your organization. Any resources that come up today that you want to share, feel free to put them in the chat box. All right. And just a quick overview of our time together here today. This is a very condensed version made for the virtual world. In the future, look for treks where we can all gather and go to a physical location. And for now, we'll spend time here. We are going to make sure we leave enough time for your questions. So you can see our lineup here, and I think we're ready to get started. Sarah, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I was focused on trying to stop not just the screen share, but also actually close out the presentation and was looking at my second screen here. All right, so we are going to move into having each of our panelists introduce themselves and their work. And as Maureen already mentioned, if any panelists have any visual materials they would like to share with us, we do have screen sharing enabled, and we have it enabled in such a way that you all can move from one person to the next fairly quickly. So please let us know though if you have any issues with that. So we're going to start today with Kelsey, as the previous slide just mentioned. So I just want to share the questions aloud. And Maureen will also put these in the chat for the panelists, just so you don't have to write them down for yourself. So we'd like you to tell us a little bit about your professional journey and your current role. How did you get into working in your role? Introduce and describe your organization, providing examples of different types of roles to work in, apply to, or other roles in your organization, especially if you have any entry-level, limited-term employment or internship opportunities. And what's your best advice about how to get into your role? So thank you so much, and we'll go ahead and start with Kelsey.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelsey Denker. I'm a forester with the DNR out of Crandon, so up in northern Wisconsin. My current role is forester and G&A specialist. So just for a quick summary, G&A is the Good Neighbor Authority, which is an agreement between the state and the feds to help them manage their lands and promote forestry in local economies. So I work on federal land as a DNR employee, setting up timber sales, writing conservation plans, doing protection work against invasive species, and that sort of thing. I guess to start back, I'm actually a UW-Madison alumni and graduated in 2012. And I guess one of the things that I'm just going to say right away and encourage everyone is if you're interested in getting into, forestry, wildlife biology, anything from that realm of things, I would really encourage people to try to do internships while you're still in school during the summers. I think those are really valuable experiences to gain before you graduate and really set you up for success getting a job once you do graduate. When I was an undergrad, I did some work with research. So I worked with the forestry professors and collected data up in northern Michigan. I basically camped out all summer and collected data on trees and eventually did some calculations at the end, and the data was used for a 50-year study of tree growth to basically collaborate and prove computer models for how trees grow. So it was kind of a proof for those computer models. Then after I graduated, I kind of hopped around to short-term forestry jobs. I worked in the private industry for a while, setting up timber sales. So that's basically painting out an area in the woods, making boundaries of where the loggers will be sustainably harvesting wood, marking individual trees within that area, and then collecting volume data on what is being taken out versus what's being left, those sorts of things. And eventually I got my job with the DNR after 5 years of short-term employment. So don't give up if that ends up being you. There is an end in sight. Each experience that I had really just built upon my previous experience and gave me the skills I needed to succeed in the DNR. Since I've been with the DNR, I've actually had 3 different roles. The first was working with the counties. I helped them with their timber sales and just kind of their general planning for their county forest. And then I moved to another county forest and did the same. And now I'm in a similar role, but with the feds instead. And let's see, for the DNR, there's a lot of different jobs related to forestry. The main 2 that people hear about a lot are the forester and the forest technician. Most foresters either work with private landowners, they work on state lands, or in some cases, they even work on county and federal lands, setting up timber sales, mapping ATV trails, and most foresters also have a fire management component to their job. So a secondary part of my job is a fire ranger. So during high fire season, I'm out there putting out fires in the woods, basically, and doing prescribed burns to promote the habitat and that sort of thing. And then technicians do similar jobs and use heavy equipment like dozers during fire season to help us put out fires. There's a lot of other jobs. So there's forest health specialists. There are water people that help us with best management practices to make sure we're protecting our waterways. There are people specialized in fire in the DNR and how that plays a role in the larger landscape. Silviculturalists, which is basically the science of how trees grow and how to sustainably harvest trees. And I don't know, there's lots of jobs. I feel like one of the benefits for working for a larger organization like the DNR is the opportunity to transfer or move to new locations and still maintain that job stability and your benefits as well. So any experience in the public sector will definitely help towards that end. DNR also hires lots of LTEs every year, and I was going to copy in a link to the DNR's jobs website. Do that right now. So that website will take you to both long-term employment opportunities and also LTE opportunities. Because of COVID right now, I don't believe the DNR is currently hiring LTEs, but hopefully that will change next spring. There's usually a big push in the spring to hire new LTEs for the summer season. And one thing that I will say is once you get in as an LTE, it's a lot easier to get another LTE job or even to just compete better against your peers as far as getting a long-term employment position. And other than that, yeah, I think the biggest advice I would say is just try to get some kind of internship or short-term job while you're in school and just keep gaining on that experience. As a person that worked in the LTE world for over 5 years, it can be a little disheartening, but I'd say stick with it. If it's something you're really passionate about, then you'll find your place in the end. So that's about all I had.
Kelsey, thank you so much. Very, very helpful insights. And I really want to just emphasize that last point about sticking with something if you're really passionate about it. So, and I know, I trust that students who are here today are quite passionate about the environment, and that's why they've joined us. So we are going to move on to our second panelist, who I see in my screen happens to be immediately below you, and that is Kelly. So Kelly, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you about your own experiences regarding those same questions that I asked initially. So take it away, Kelly. Kelly, we are having trouble hearing you, just as an FYI. It doesn't appear that you're muted, so it could just be some type of setting.
Is that working any better?
Yes, we can hear you now. Wonderful.
But I can't hear you. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I will start over. And I also work for the Department of Natural Resources, and I am in the Natural Heritage Conservation Program, and I am the invasive plant coordinator for that program. So I work with partners around the state. So I have a statewide position, but I work out of Madison, and I have a lot of folks that we work with to partner, because there's only a few of us that work statewide on invasive plants. And so we have to really depend on people that we can work with all throughout the state. So we work on identifying what some of the invasive plants are that invade into forest, wetlands, prairies, and other natural areas. And then we create a lot of educational materials and outreach materials. I do lots of talks, and we encourage people to report plants that they haven't seen before, or to ask questions about any plants that they have that they need invasive species information on. So I spend a lot of time answering people's questions. And I also, when people do submit something that's new to the area or new to the state, then we work with them and try to get them to do the control work there. And if necessary, then we help with that. And especially if it's a new thing to the state, then we do what we can to try to actually eradicate the population. Most populations we can't eradicate, but if it's something new, we can. So we also work a lot on policies and regulations. And so Wisconsin developed the first really statewide and comprehensive invasive species law over the last about 20 years. We started in the 1990s working on this. And it covers plants, animals, forest pest, and disease organisms. And so that really helps us with our outreach and our education, that we actually have that law in place and can show people what are the species that we're especially concerned about. A lot of our partner groups really help with this as well. And one of the areas where is a good place for actually getting in on the ground with working with invasive work is working either with a private company that does restoration work on the ground. And we have lots of those in Wisconsin. And I could send you a link to our spreadsheet for our list of those folks. And if you are interested in actually coordinating invasive species work, we actually have these cooperative invasive species management areas that usually have a coordinator that has very recently gotten out of college in this field. So my own background, I grew up in Indiana. I went to Purdue University and got my bachelor's in horticulture. And while I was there, I found out about this restoration ecology program that Madison had. And it was the only two of them in the country at the time. Now there's a lot of them, but it was in the landscape architecture department. So while I was in the master's program there, I made sure that I got work study funding, because I wanted to work either with the Nature Conservancy or the State Natural Areas program, which is in the DNR. And if you're not familiar with work study funding, this is a part of your federal financial aid. And this is a program that when you apply for federal financial aid, you actually check off a box if you're interested in getting work study funding. And a lot of people use their funding to work in a dorm cafeteria or in the union or someplace like that. But there are also jobs you can get working with a local community organization. We had, I think, 15 work study students last year. This year it's a little harder because we're all working out of our homes, and so it's a little harder for us to have hired new people. But there's definitely jobs out there that are in professional areas that you could get as a work study student. I started working in the Natural Heritage Conservation Program, working with our state natural area program and our endangered and threatened species program. And so we work with all the rare species, plants and animals as well. And they finally had an LTE position that came open. So I took that, and I was an LTE for 6 years before I finally got what's called a permanent or FTE position. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what an LTE is, these are short-term positions that are for 1,039 hours or 6 months, and you can actually have 2 of them concurrently. And so you're actually you can stay on as a long-term LTE if you have 2 of these positions concurrently. And a lot of people actually are on very, very long time, like years, as an LTE. But as Kelsey said, some people are actually can get permanent jobs after that as well, or you just get the experience and move on somewhere else. So it is a good way to get in. In DNR, we have about 3,000 positions, and about half of those are LTEs, either seasonal or long-term, year-round LTEs. The current hiring freeze is really kind of put a crunch on hiring, but this last summer, they actually did hire a lot of LTEs in the parks program because we were getting slammed by visitors in the parks. So that is one area to look at if COVID still keeps these hiring freezes on in the future, is any areas where there's a lot of, where they really need a lot of people to help out. So the other thing that I would advise is, as Kelsey mentioned, taking advantage of your summers and getting different kind of jobs in fields that you think you might be interested in. And using work study, if you can get that, it's great. Don't expect to get a permanent, well-paying job in conservation right away. It's not going to happen. It's a field with a lot of competition. When we put out a position, we have dozens of people apply, and that doesn't mean you can't get something, but you need to kind of start off getting the experience first. And if you're looking for high pay, you're in the wrong field. So don't even think about going into conservation if money is the most important thing for you. In this field, if you want to be in a more kind of high pay position, generally it's with the national level environmental consulting firms. And then next is probably the federal government, then the state, then local governments, and the nonprofits are usually don't pay great, but they try to have good benefits, and they're great people to work with. So if you know the kind of work that you want to do, and then find out who's already doing that kind of work, and try to make an appointment where you can talk to them and ask them about their job, how they got there, what they do, and find out if it's a kind of work you really want to do. And because you don't want to aim for something and then find out you don't really like it. So do what you can to kind of get that experience ahead of time. With that, I'll pass it on to the next person.
Kelly, thank you so much, and I appreciate your insights about the different levels of this work, and also the dose of realism there about some of the challenges, but also the opportunities that are inherent in this work. So we're going to turn to Shaylee next. Shaylee, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Just to make sure before I start talking.
We can, yep.
Okay, great. So I also work for the DNR, and I've had a couple of good introductions to it. And it's nice to be on a panel like this because it shows the real breadth of the agency. So I work in the water use program, and that's part of the environmental management division. So that's different than the divisions that the last 2 speakers are in. And environmental management's got air management, drinking water and groundwater, the Office of Great Waters, remediation and redevelopment, waste and materials management, and water quality. And so a lot of the programs in the division I work in deal with environmental management laws, and permits that people need. So the kinds of things that factories, businesses, cities all have permits that they have to make sure that they're not polluting the air and water and land. And if there is that pollution, then what do you do about it? How do you remediate those issues? And so I specifically work in the water use program, and this is part of the Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau. And what we do is our program is focused on implementing the Great Lakes Compact, and then also implementing groundwater quantity laws for this state. I've been with this part of this program for about 10 years, and I mostly do water policy work at this point. And I can talk a little bit more about that, but I started with the DNR 15 years ago, and I started in their Office of Great Lakes. And so that's, sort of a small office that worked on Great Lakes policy. And when I started, I had a really unique opportunity to work on implementing legislation for the Great Lakes Compact. So some of you may have heard about the Great Lakes Compact in classes, and I'm getting at least one head nod, so that's always encouraging. And then other people may not be familiar with it, but what it is it's this agreement between 8 Great Lakes states, 2 Canadian provinces to manage the water of the Great Lakes collectively, and to do that from a provincial and a state perspective rather than a federal perspective. And so all of the states and provinces had to put together legislation to kind of implement this agreement in a parallel format. And so I had an opportunity that was pretty amazing to be part of working on that legislation when I first started at the department. And then after about 5 years, I moved into this new section where I am now that's really charged with a lot of the implementation of what those laws are. And so, that means everything from we do a lot of work to make sure that people who are using water are reporting that water to the state, and then taking the information that they give us and, putting that together into reports so that people know how it's being used. We're using that information if people are applying for new high capacity wells to see if there'll be impacts on lakes and streams or other municipal wells. And then we also get applications that we manage in our program for diversions of Great Lakes water. So if anybody's heard about the planned diversion to the city of Milwaukee, or there's a diversion proposal that the city of Racine had related to the Foxconn property, those things happen in my program. And one of the things that I've done through these roles has done a lot of outreach, a lot of talking to people about the compact. And then that's moved in, as those have been approved, into a lot of public hearings. So I've moved into where I give talks, and I, respond to questions and things at public hearings. And sometimes those can be really controversial. And I just bring that up as an aspect at the DNR that there's a lot of that public outreach, whether it's people who are interested in a topic or for soliciting public opinion. And I kind of love it. Like, it's this sort of exciting place to be, trying to answer the general public's questions about a project and explain what you do know or you don't know. And sometimes they're pretty high charge situations. But it's kind of nice to feel like you can be somebody who really helps people understand a situation, even if everybody doesn't agree. And I just bring that up too, because I probably would never have thought I'd be excited about those kinds of roles as an undergrad. I didn't really like public speaking at that point in time. So I just bring that up because it's you can go lots of different ways as you get experience, and things that you maybe wouldn't have liked can become really interesting. And then I'll mention maybe just a little bit sort of prior to working at the DNR, my experience. So I went to a small liberal arts college in Minnesota, and I got an undergrad degree in math. I was really interested in ecology and biology, and I had also taken a lot of math classes, and I figured out that I do the math major, and then I could just take the biology classes I was interested in, and I could kind of skip the ones that were more like a pre-med track. So that worked out well for me. And then after I graduated from college, I drove up to Alaska with a friend, and we worked in fish packing plants and kind of saw a lot of the country and learned about natural resources from people, fishing and sort of how those processes work. I worked at a couple of outdoor ed facilities. There's a lot of those places that have interns. I did environmental ed and outdoor ed, and worked with a lot of kids in a lot of different types of communities, whether it was rural Minnesota or St. Louis, urban St. Louis. And then I decided, I took one grad class and I loved it. And I decided I should go to grad school. And so I came to Wisconsin. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison and got a master's degree in hydrogeology. And, you know, at that point, I knew I was interested in wetlands. And so the water science part of the wetlands is kind of what got me to that program. And after I got my master's, I worked for a couple different places, including the UW People program, doing some more teaching and working for the State Geological Survey, working on water table maps, and then working for the Wisconsin Academy of Sciences, Arts, and Letters on a big water policy project statewide. And the connections through the Academy project are what got me connected to the DNR. And I started again as an LTE, and I was an LTE for 2 years, and then moved into permanent positions from there. And with that, I'll maybe stop there to make sure we got enough time for other people.
Thank you so much, Shaylee. It's wonderful to hear about your varied experiences as well. And I really appreciate your point about the breadth and the depth of the DNR. We wanted to have a few panelists from the DNR precisely because there are so many different aspects to the work that you all do. And we wanted students to see that there's multiple opportunities within the organization. So thank you for that. We are going to go on to our next panelist now, and very excited to have this panelist here. And so Vijay, welcome. Please introduce yourself and share with us your own story.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to all the panelists. This has been a great session. I am going to share a couple of slides so if you can see them. I am Vijay Lamai. I'm a climate and health scientist at a nonprofit organization called NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council. And I'm a Madison native and UW grad for grad school. So just to kind of walk through how I got to where I am now. I studied environmental science and Spanish as an undergraduate out at Berkeley. And like a number of panelists have mentioned, try to take advantage of every summer and work study to get experience and exposure in a lot of different avenues in terms of environmental research. And I even worked, for the city of Madison in the water utility to try to understand sort of what I liked most about the field of environmental science. After finishing my undergraduate degree, I was kind of not sure what I wanted to do and ended up attending a career fair and talking to folks at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the federal government. This is the agency that's charged with implementing the big laws like the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. And it was actually at that job fair that I just, handed my resume over, not expecting anything, and eventually landed in a 2-year federal career internship program, which was a great opportunity for me to realize that I missed school for one thing, but also just to get experience as a working person and understand kind of where I fit in to the world of environmental policy. So I spent about 2 years at EPA and spent that time actually looking into graduate school options. I got more interested in the connections between the environment and public health and decided to come back to Madison actually to pursue a PhD in epidemiology, which is basically just the science of public health. So I did a joint degree in the Nelson Institute and over in the Department of Population Health Sciences, focusing on research and science to understand the health implications of climate change. So I spent about 5 years in Madison, again, took advantage of a lot of time in the summers, especially to get exposure in learning a foreign language. I do a lot of work in India and spent a summer in Madison learning Hindi. I spent a summer as an intern at the State Department working on international environmental policy, and another summer abroad working on research in Austria. So got a lot of experience on the research side as well as in teaching as a part of being a graduate student. And then, so that was about 5 years ago that I finished at Madison, and then have spent the last few years kind of taking a circuitous path. I think one of the take-home lessons from this panel is that oftentimes there's not a straight line to the career that you want, but it's great to get exposure, especially in kind of short-term situations where you can really see how you feel about different work environments. So I've worked at a bunch of places and ended up at NRDC. We are a big environmental advocacy group. We're about 700 strong with offices all across the country. I'm based in our New York office. We are a group that's working on an international environmental advocacy when it comes to, defending people, defending the planet from the crises of biodiversity loss and climate change. We've got about 700 people on staff, and that includes a whole mix of people like me who are scientists, but also lawyers, a lot of lawyers and policy experts. We focus our work on three main areas: protecting human health and building community resilience to climate change, advocacy and policy to transition our economy towards a clean energy future, and then also protecting the natural world upon which all of human life depends as well. So I just want to send you all the link to our NRDC website for career opportunities. This is where we put up everything that we have on offer, everything from short-term, summer internships or internships during the school year to full-time work. Everything is posted there. We also have a lot of our experts like me blogging on topics that might interest all of you, and you can get in touch with people whose work excites you to talk about potential opportunities to work together. We're pretty active on social media, and I put our stuff there too. So I just want to close, make sure there's a lot of time for Q&A, but just offer that there's a lot of different work to be done when it comes to environmental policy and the advocacy space. I'm a scientist, so I focus quite a bit on the research and analysis, but I also work quite a bit on communicating science. So any of you who might be interested in journalism, communications, for example, there's plenty of work out there. This is just a sample of some of the work that I've been involved in over the past couple of years to try to talk about climate change as a health crisis and to try to make the case in different ways. So I will wrap it up there. Happy to take Q&A later, and that's my contact info. I'll share it in the chat too. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Vijay. What a great presentation. And I want to let you know, if you actually go into the chat, if you're willing to share, there is it's a little thing that says file. And if you click on that, actually, you can upload that, the set of slides that you
Sure.
Okay. Any student who wants, they can download that. If that's too complicated, you can always send them to us and we'll forward them out to students. So wonderful. All right, and we are rounding the corner here to our final panelist. Last but certainly not least is Lisa. So Lisa, thank you for being with us, and look forward to having you share as well.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Lisa Giesenbauer. I am the president of Evolution Marketing. So we are an environmental marketing communications and sustainability consulting firm. So I brought show and tell items because I, like the previous speaker, never thought I'd be doing communications. I am a sociologist by training, and I worked with farmers and farm management practices. I studied rural and urban sociology like 20 years ago, before there was any degrees in any degrees in sustainability offered. So I was at Michigan State for my graduate work. I did my undergrad at Whitewater. So my background, I'm a sociologist. I didn't have any business training. I took some communication classes, but really org study. I mean, all straight up sociology, social psychology, environmental sociology. And here I am owning a business. So you don't need an MBA to own a business. I am an entrepreneur. I started my own business. My business is pretty unique. Here's our logo. As you can see, we do sustainability consulting, public relations, branding, and marketing. And so all of our work and all of our clients' work is within the field of sustainability. And when I say sustainability, I mean from a holistic perspective. So I like to say that you give me a problem and I can give you a sustainability solution, because I take systems theory. I use systems theory to answer the questions or to provide you with a solution. Okay. So we've been in business now. This is our 14th year. And going back to my postcard, you can see, so this is me speaking several years ago at International Women's Day event about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm a huge proponent of SDGs. This is Leah, my marketing associate, who was an intern from the Nelson Institute, and now she's graduated, lives in Kansas City, and works remotely for me. So she's awesome. So I love Nelson Institute, or Nelson graduates, I guess you'd say. This is my car, Bunny. I was the first business in Wisconsin to have the all-electric Nissan Leaf back in 2012. I know, crazy, right? So here's my car, and then here's our mascot, Basil. And here's my graphic artist, Mike, who happens to be my husband, who's doing recycling. So I wanted to show that evolution marketing isn't just about Lisa, it's about me bringing together a team of creative communications professionals who all have sustainability knowledge, background, training, and a passion for it. Okay. So some of the work that we do is we work with the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin. So they're a nonprofit. About 50% of our clients are nonprofits. We really enjoy helping nonprofits to tell their story. Specifically, trying to find a page in here. There's all kinds of wonky information that academics and scientists and researchers have. We help communicate that wonky information into charts, into diagrams, you know, and in ways that make sense to the reader. For example, tied into public policy, VJ's nodding his head, like he's like, you totally get it, right? Because it's hard, right? And that's why too, I started evolution marketing was because I was working as a marketing director and doing communications PR work, which is really fun. And I love that. But the client I was working for didn't want to do more sustainability stuff. And I was like, dude, this isn't cool. We have to change the world, right? And so when I started evolution marketing, my whole goal was to operate a business from a triple bottom line perspective. So here's a cool marketing piece we made a couple years ago. And it's really cool is this is the kind of stuff we get to do. So now as a marketing communications company that works in the sustainability field, we can make cool things like this, right? With fun messaging and everything. I don't know how well this is translating, but I'm gonna pull something out of it because I think this is the coolest thing. That we made this super cool book, okay? And what we did is I made sure that everything we do, hopefully you can see this, it's done in an environmentally responsible manner. So for the last 14 years, we've really tried to lead by example, saying that if you do need marketing communications services, they can be done in an environmentally responsible way. This project, the paper is Forest Stewardship Council certified. So one of the speakers worked in SFS. Yeah, right there, you're just waving. Thank Kelly, right? Kelsey, sorry, Kelsey, right? You work at FSC. So this is paper from where Kelsey works from the trees, where she works to make sure they're sustainably forested, ended up in this product. And then it's also green power certified. So that means green renewable energy in Wisconsin was used to make this. So this is just one example of things that evolution marketing can do. Some of the other stuff that we do that I'm really proud of is because we do Marcom, we also do certifications. So here is a certification. You see that the B Corp certification? So this is one of my clients, Rebel Green, and my small team managed their third-party verification to become a certified B Corp last year. Evolution Marketing was the 7th certified B Corp in Wisconsin. We now have 15. So I'm on the board for B Local Wisconsin and really want to grow this movement. And you say, well, why is B Corp important? Well, B Corp means that my business is meeting the highest, most rigorous standards by a third party that demonstrates that evolution marketing is doing the things we say we're doing. So we're actually giving back 2.5% of our earnings every year are going back to nonprofits, 2% to environmental nonprofits, 0.5% to non-environmental nonprofits. I mean, to socially minded nonprofits. We're part of the 1% for the Planet family of companies. So 1% for the Planet actually audits my business to make sure that what Lisa says we're doing, we're actually doing. So when you go back to this postcard, so you can see we're part of the 1% family. We're certified B Corp. We're a partner in the Carbon Fund program. So what that means is that since January 1st, 2018, we've been third-party audited to demonstrate that we are actually offering our services in a carbon neutral manner. Now, we've been doing our services in a carbon neutral manner since we started the business, but I did not have a third party verify that process. Now I have. So now I can say if a company were to hire, if somebody was to hire evolution marketing, we could say that we offer our services in a carbon neutral manner. So basically what I'm trying to say is all the things that we're doing for our business and then for our clients. So again, here's Rebel Green and here's one of their products and here's their B Corp logo. So all of these things that we're doing, we're helping businesses to demonstrate and lead by example and showcase what they're doing in an environmentally responsible manner. And we're helping them to get those third-party credentials that demonstrate that. Because for those of you who don't know, there are over 3,500 certifications that exist out there on products and buildings and everything else. So we work in the green building sector. We work in the, this is called the CPG, consumer packaged goods sector. And then we really work with the verification side. So a lot of the organizations that do the verifications are nonprofits. So right now I'm working on a Leaping Bunny certification. You say, well, what's Leaping Bunny? Here's a little Leaping Bunny right there. And Leaping Bunny means that the client I'm working with, they do not test any of their products or any of the ingredients that go into their products on animals, which to me, that's super important, right? So this is what I do. This job didn't exist. I created my business, like I said, 14 years ago. Our competition for evolution marketing is actually in Europe. It's not here stateside. We're very progressive in what we're doing. My team has been working at and creating a niche for ourselves in the United States. Our clients are in Wisconsin and throughout the United States. I have some EU clients, but COVID's really changed a lot of things. So we're kind of going through this, not reorg, but the way we do things is changing, right? And so the clients that I have, I'm realizing that I'm getting more West Coast and East Coast clients and more EU clients now. The world's changing. So what I want to do is I'm going to share with you, I put some little notes together here that I'm going to share. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you totally can. I do take interns. So if anyone is interested in being an intern, take interns every year, take them through the school year as well as in the summertime. I'm also on the board for the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council. So for those of you who don't know, we have a conference every year. So this year it's on December 8th and 9th, and I just checked, and we have special rates for students. Students usually could go to the conference for $25, but it was for one day. This year, we're doing the conference 2 days, December 8th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. and December 9th, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you go to both days, it's $25. $15 if you just go to one day. I'll be holding a session there about workforce development issues and challenges and strategies. So I kind of work at this intersection of workforce, social responsibility, HR, communications, and public policy. It's kind of all of this intersectionality. That's where I work. And it's really cool. I love what I do. This job didn't exist. I created it. So I think if there's something you want to do, you can create the job, because that's what the future is, right? If you dream it, it can be real. All right, I'll stop talking and wait for questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And I am going to turn it, and to all of our panelists, I'm going to turn it over to Maureen now to manage our Q&A. I will let everybody know that we did ask panelists if they did have a little extra time to stay a little later. We would appreciate that. Of course, it's not expected given everyone's busy schedules. But just so you all know as students, there may be some panelists that are staying a little longer. So Maureen, turn it over to you.
So we're going to have this event longer in the future to hear from all of our panelists. Thank you all. I can start us out with a question, but students, this is really for you. If there is anyone who has a burning question, this would be a great time to let us know, to put it in the chat, or to put a thumbs up. So for our remaining time here, what do you want to know? So thinking about your day-to-day work, what is a skill you use that you maybe wouldn't have thought, as looking back to your undergrad years, that you would be using in your current work? I feel like some of you alluded to this already. So any of our panelists, if something comes to mind, please unmute and share.
Public speaking, for sure.
Absolutely.
And actually good communication with the public speaking, because I feel like, honestly, I'm an educator, even though I'm not working at the university, because I'm working on a topic that you have to have special knowledge to understand. Everything I do is education, right? I feel like that's inherent in my life.
Yes.
I would
Especially
also
in the
say-
virtual world.
I would also say that when you are passionate about something, it's a lot easier to speak about that and promote it with other people.
Mhm.
When I was in school, my face would go red every time I had to even ask a question to the professors. But now that I'm sharing this and trying to promote sustainable forestry, it just comes so much easier. So I would encourage you, even if you don't feel like public speaking is something that's for you, it doesn't mean that you can't grow and learn from that.
So true. Is research training needed? Why or why not?
I'll maybe speak to this. So I did a master's program at UW-Madison, and I think when you're at a university like UW, you have a lot of exposure for opportunities to be involved in research. And one of the reasons I didn't go on to do a PhD is I didn't really enjoy the process of, you know, that all of the detail that went into doing the research. So a couple of years of that was great. I had a great project, but I didn't really want to do more of that. But one of the things I did realize is I loved understanding the answers for people who were doing all of that really nitty-gritty work of data collection and data synthesis and data analysis. And so I think it is really beneficial to have some research background for understanding that process, and maybe also kind of being in that world where you're working with professors who that's what they've made as their career choice, as they love that. You know, you don't need to love it the same way they maybe do to still have a lot to offer, you know, in the future in other fields and things. But I do think it's really helpful to be able to understand what goes into writing a scientific paper, being able to read that introduction and conclusion, and really figuring out if it applies to the question you're working on. So.
And I'm going to add to that, back to the previous question. I worked on grants when I was in grad school. I never thought grant writing would be important, but one of the first jobs I did when we started Evolution Marketing was writing grants for the not Affordable Care Act, Recovery Reinvestment Act money that came about. So I wrote 4, 5, 6, I can't remember. I wrote a lot of grant applications for that, because all of my clients didn't know how to write grants, you know, and so it's not anything I really enjoy doing, but it's something that if you know how to do it, you do it. And I think the second question, lifelong learning, I think is the most important thing for me. Understanding and having a willingness to continue to learn and grow and develop yourself is so important, because the world is changing. I mean, literally the first job in sustainability was in 2005. That first job was at Eco Imagination, which was out of GE Healthcare here in Waukesha County, which is where I'm located. I mean, so we've only had jobs in sustainability for 15 years. Okay, so this is a new discipline. This is a new way of thinking. To me, it's not, because it's been my entire graduate program and then my life, but the majority of people, it didn't exist. So I have to say that so many things are coming and changing, and with the advent of technology and where we're going with artificial intelligence, and there's so many things that are coming down the pike that I think that if we're not lifelong learners and critical thinkers, we're not going to be able to be successful. So that's my 10 cents for whatever it's worth. It's not so much about the degrees, it's about the willingness to learn. I mean, I read all kinds of academic stuff all the time that aren't in my field. I mean, it's nothing tied to sociology, but I'm reading it because I want to understand and I want to be able to help my client. I mean, I know way more about electricity grids, the energy grid, than I ever wanted to. That anybody needs to know, okay, for real, about utility grids and renewable energy and conversion to renewables. I mean, no one needs to know this information, but I do, because I'm helping my clients, and it's important if I'm put in a position that I could talk about that in a clear and cohesive manner.
That's awesome. Yes, that goes to all of us for sure. In our very short time and all these great questions coming through, I think this pertains to everyone. What kinds of environmental internships do you think will be more common than most given COVID-19 circumstances? So any thoughts on how they're changing, where we might see more opportunity?
What I've seen, there's a lot more environmental internships for like natural resource conservation, a lot of groups in the Marcom division. So I've actually worked with and mentored several young professionals who are working in a Marcom division at an environmental nonprofit, because there's an internship there and they can do it virtually, you know. And so really the executive director is like, just give Lisa a call. She will talk to you about what public relations means or whatever, you know. And so I think there might be opportunities like that, because there's a lot of skills that you can learn as long as you have the basic understanding of science. If you understand science and biology, you're gonna do pretty good, you know.
I would
Yeah,
also
I think in
say
general, go ahead,
Oh,
go ahead, Kelsey.
I was just going to say, in my field right now, I know they're not hiring at this very moment, but there's always going to be a need for those field workers collecting data. And in the future, it might look more like you go out in the woods, you collect the data, and then you're crunching that data and doing the math and all the spreadsheets and stuff from home. I mean, my background, I'm at home right now. I'm still working for the DNR, but I think there's going to be a lot more flexibility as to where you're working from on those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think for the short term, probably in 2021, we're not going to see as many field opportunities of people actually getting to get out in the field, especially in crews of multiple people. And so a lot of internships are going to be things you're going to have to be able to do in your own home. But hopefully long term we'll get out of that and we'll be back to more normal type of internships and summer type positions.
So we all want to make a positive impact in the world. Do you have any advice for not feeling overwhelmed when we can't make change fast enough? That's a hard one, right? As we reach this 1 o'clock hour, it may be hard to address these. We will have all of these questions saved to help guide our next program students. So please keep in mind that we will have more treks. Look for opportunities next semester. Panelists, if any of you can stay around for a few minutes, if you want to look at the questions in the chat and see if you might give a brief response, if you feel like you can answer that, that would be awesome. I'm also going to include the link to our feedback survey for students. And if any of you have a few minutes to stay around, maybe answering another question or two.
I'll stick around because I know people always like to talk about products, because that's the other thing. I mean, we really haven't talked about manufacturing, right? The reality is we're in Wisconsin, there's a lot of manufacturing opportunities, and there's a lot of opportunities for students with environmental degrees to go work in a company as their environmental management services person, or working on the compliance side of things, Clean Air, Clean Water Act stuff. So that's something to think about that we haven't really talked about.
I'd like to also go back to the question about not feeling overwhelmed. There's a lot of us that are really interested in doing what we can for the environment, and it takes everybody to do it, and everybody finds their niche. And if you can work in whatever your niche is and what you're good at and what you're passionate at, you will be helping, and it'll help keep you from feeling overwhelmed because you're actually doing something really helpful.
I maybe would just add a quick addition to what Kelly said. Is there's a book we've been reading in my family kind of over and over again. It's called Braiding Sweetgrass. And I think that the author is got Wisconsin connections. And I think one of the things that she does really nicely there is talk about both what are the problems in the environment or ways that the environment's degraded, and then the ways that people are connected to the environment and how all of that connection and work is part of healing the injuries. And so I know that for us has been a nice piece that speaks to the issue that the person brings up, and so that's maybe an immediate action. But I agree with Kelly that if you're in the middle of doing something, then you can feel like you're a part of the solution.
Yeah, I agree. I also think, we find ourselves in a moment where we have, I think, more momentum built on this issue than maybe in a long, long time. So that's encouraging.
I might also just add quickly in that there are so many success stories out there. And so sometimes finding those can be really motivating and energizing. I've worked, some of my earliest people that I worked with talked about the Fox River and the pollution in the Fox River and how few fish there were, and all of the efforts of the Clean Water Act and sort of the dramatic change in the fishery in that river. And some of those kinds of things show you that it takes a long time, it takes a lot of effort, but that those efforts make a huge difference.
Well, And to follow up on that, so my friend Pam Barker, I don't know if you ever met her, but she was the attorney. She was the environmental attorney appointed by, I think it was Appleton Kohler, then it became Appian. She oversaw the cleanup of the Fox River because of the paper mill she worked for did all the pollution. So Pam in the 80s, when she graduated, I think it was like 83, she graduated from her law degree. There were no environmental lawyers, let alone women as environmental lawyers. So she was one of the first female environmental lawyers operating in that space. So I've known her for a long time. She was on the board, the Wisconsin State Business Council with me. But the point is, there's jobs on both sides. It's not just being on the government, telling you your naughty side. There's also private sector side jobs too. And Pam never thought that she would end up being a compliance lawyer, but she ended up really loving her job. And then she was able to tell us stories over the years about the great things that happened by the Fox River cleanup. So I just think that there's two sides to everything, right? It's not like one side's good and one side's bad, but that actually in the public sector, there are a lot of jobs now that are actually benefiting us, especially if you wanted to work for a benefit corporation or certified B Corp, because our companies need to do, our companies are doing that. We're held to that higher standard. So just something to think about.
Someone asked a question about if environmental work requires a strong science background, and I would say generally no. It really depends on what you want to be doing. And if you want to be doing research, like a laboratory research, then yeah, you're going to need to have some background. You're going to need to have an advanced degree. If you want to be doing advocacy work, policy work, all of those things, it helps to have that background and knowledge. And as people were saying earlier, to be able to understand the issues, but you don't have to have that kind of science-based work in your own background necessarily. You just need to be able to understand it and to actually be the one to be doing the advocacy work or that policy making work.
Yeah. So, and one of the nice things about being at a campus like Madison is that you're surrounded by a community of students, graduate students, experts in the field. Don't be shy about approaching those folks and learning about what they do. Oftentimes they are eager for help or eager to talk about their work or eager to hear about your interests. For me, I wish that was something I had taken more advantage of when I was an undergraduate. And so I think that's a bridge and a resource that you have right here in Madison too.
And okay, I'm going to say it, the whole state of Wisconsin, because remember, we have the Wisconsin State Business Council, and many of our businesses on the council take interns. Our program itself takes interns. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of opportunities, I think, that are outside of Madison that you may not be aware of. So just please, if you're looking for any type of job in, like I'm talking about compliance. I mean, so many of these jobs that we've talked about in the chat bar. I mean, you can find these with businesses today that, again, 20 years ago, there weren't, but now today there are. So please feel free to look at the Wisconsin State Business Council. Jessie Servi-Ortiz is our managing director. You can call her, you can email her, and you can say, Lisa told me to contact you, and she will help you. Okay, that's all you need to say. Okay. I mean, there's lots of opportunities now. And I know from the business standpoint, I hear it from business employers all the time. They want to connect with students. They want to bring interns in, but they're not sure where to go and how to do that. Okay. So that's part of why I keep hitting on the Wisconsin State Business Council, because we're unveiling a membership model in January of this next year. And so we're going to be able to list job opportunities and internships in our membership model. Okay. So look for our website. Okay. Good stuff is coming there.
I would also say that if you have a professor that you really click with or have gotten to know well, that can be a huge resource for finding a job. I worked with a professor in the forestry department closely on some research, and then just kind of kept in touch with him, stopped by his office every once in a while to ask questions about the lecture. And he actually got me more than one job out of college, where people were calling me saying, hey, so-and-so said you need a job. Do you want to come work for us? So I'm not saying that's going to happen in every situation, but if you build those relationships, things can definitely happen.
Also, if you are not tied into the Nelson Institute, then I believe that they have a regular email newsletter that goes out that includes job notices. So they used to have a great job board in Science Hall. My guess is that's not happening as much now, but they have maintained a really good job network. Also, the Ecological Society of America has a very good job announcement listing as well. There's lots of organizations like that that have listings of internships as well as longer term jobs.
Thank you to everyone.
Maureen, I'm not seeing much else in the chat for people's questions.
I'm not either. No, it looks like all of you got to a lot of these and answered some in the chat. Thank you.
There were a couple questions. I don't know if they perhaps were answered in the chat. One was from an international student who was curious about, as an international student, what opportunities might exist, knowing that there are some special pieces like in terms of status with OPT or CPT, which stands for Occupational and Curricular Practical Training. And then there was also a question about potential jobs for environmental economists. So don't know if any of you have any thoughts on either of those questions. I'm not sure if either of those were answered in the chat, but.
The only thing on the international one would be to contact the HR department. It would be very easy to send an email and, you know, and pose that question for how that applies for internships at the DNR. I'm sorry that I don't know the answer to that, but it should be a pretty quick question that would get answered.
Well, and
Thank you.
as I say, I did a lecture at Marquette University earlier this year, and some of the students were from Ecuador. And so I ended up talking with them afterwards and about internships. And so they're going to school remotely from Ecuador. They're taking classes at Marquette, and they're going to do internships remotely. So I think right now, because of COVID, there is a new unique opportunity for at least students who are globally, global places, to do internships with US businesses that might have been maybe more challenging in the past. So something to think about. I know at least the businesses that I'm working with are doing things like that more virtually,
I also see someone asked about animal opportunities in the chat. And just because I was a forest undergrad, so in the College of Ag and Life Sciences. So it might be worth talking to someone in CALS about some biology classes that you could take to supplement your environmental degree and kind of get some perspective from them on that. I personally don't have a lot, but I know that those opportunities do exist at Madison.
And even volunteering for wildlife type programs. The Humane Society has not only, dealing with dogs and cats, but they deal with wildlife as well. And I know people who've gotten jobs in the wildlife field at DNR also oftentimes have started off with doing volunteer work in places like that.
And then there's also, so I grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin, and my background's sustainable ag, actually, and sustainability. And we worked a lot. I've worked with many interns who have worked with different nonprofits that are working on grazing, pastureland programming, working with we called it the Cow College at Madison, the 2-year associate degree. I don't know what the actual name of it is. We just call it the Cow College, but the students that get the associate's degree in dairy herd management. So I know that there's a lot of opportunities there if you want to talk about animal agriculture versus, I'm not sure if you're talking about like pets, then I would say the vet school. I know here in Oconomowoc, we have a really great world-class horse veterinary service, and they take interns from all over the country, actually. And it's, if you want to become a veterinarian who works especially on horses, you come to Oconomowoc. I mean, they're world-class. So I don't know what type of animal opportunities you're talking about, if it's farm animals or pets, but I think there's a lot of opportunities out there.
for those of you still on, tomorrow there will be a Midwest Climate Summit career chat. And I included in the link in the chat box more information on that. I'm going to hop off to another meeting. Thank you all panelists for joining us today, and for sharing your career paths and opportunities within the field. And if you don't mind us sharing your emails, I'm sure you may get some follow-up from students afterwards.
Yeah, I want to also just echo what Maureen said, that this has been a really terrific opportunity to hear from amazing experts and in environmental careers, and really just fascinating the breadth and the depth of the field in terms of what you can do. So thank you so much to all of you for your time and the amazing work that you're doing to make our world a better place.